Greetings. Welcome to the Captive Desk. Joining the Captive Desk today is our special guest expert on looking at the trees. Look at the trees. Welcome to the Captive Desk, Trees.
Thank you. Good to be here. Glad to talk to you about looking at the trees.
All right. So, from the files scattered all around the Captive Desk is a short list of arguments for God many non believers find to be very poor arguments, and they're often grouped together as look at the trees. And who better to discuss the topic of looking at the trees is looking at the trees? Someone that actually spends a lot of time hearing arguments for the trees and is actually out in the forest looking at trees as well. Trees not only
Yeah.
does his Pastor Blaster series on his channel, and I'll have a link in the description. He also does outdoor tips, often accompanied by his best friend Dingo, from things like how to start a fire to setting a snare to how to build a shelter. So you check out his channel. Good stuff. Trees, good to see you. Been looking forward to talking with you. So let's get right into it. Trees.
All right.
Can you share with us when you are out in the forest with all those trees, what do you see?
It seems to me that trees come from other trees, prior generations of other trees, and so that's usually what I see when I'm out there. As far as like that goes, is if we're talking about the argument. But other than that, I just like getting out there and clearing my mind and taking in the smells and the sounds and everything of just being in what I consider our natural habitat, really. If you would take us out of houses and stuff like that, we would be left to live along the landscape. So that's part of why I like to be out there.
I can relate. I got my little spot of nature in my backyard. Everybody
Right.
knows me, knows I love to show off my pond. So yeah,
Pond, yeah.
I love my little peace and quiet spot in my backyard. I can relate. So when
Something
you
about
are
too. The sound of
have you
water.
ever oh yeah, it's very calming, and I've got my lawn chairs and I can sit out there and just relax, and once the work is done.
Yeah.
So when you're out in the forest, have you ever had any experiences? Have you ever had religious experience? Were you religious at one point?
Yes, I was quite uh I was very religious at one point. Whenever, I would say, from, try to put an age range on it, probably from like indoctrination age of like 5 to, I would say, probably 17, 18. I started having my doubts, but I didn't know what to call it. And I don't know if it really tied into me in, I wasn't that deep of a thinker when I was young, you know what I mean? I didn't really tie anything to nature. I didn't, it was all appeal to authority, pretty much. Might made right. The Bible's true because the Bible said it was true, and the preacher reads it to us on Sunday, and like I believed it because that's what I was raised to believe. And then as I got older, I had doubts because of music. Like a lot, I mean, a lot of the first things that got me questioning was music, like song lyrics, and hearing different metal bands that I would like would talk about like unholy shit, you know, and I would be like, at first it was so shocking to me that they would even say something like that without being like struck dead, you know. Like I always thought that if you said some shit like that, there would be a lightning bolt come out of the clouds and kill you. Like I
that
was
was
that religious at one point, you know, and then I heard it.
that was as religious thing as I ever heard. Was my grandmother used to say, if you cuss, that lightning bolt was going to come down.
Yeah,
That's about the only. I didn't come from a lot of religious stuff, but that one, yeah, don't cuss or that lightning bolt's going to get you.
yeah. Well, and this, you know, what I was hearing was like very blasphemous things, and like album covers that were like portraying Jesus being laying on an autopsy table or something, and like
Mhm.
with his rib out, laying in a dish. Like I seen a bunch of crazy shit that I was just like, how can they even do that? How can they draw that picture? How can they sing those lyrics? How can they do any of this without being punished by the Lord? And then, they continue to make millions of dollars playing shows and touring countries, doing this shit and never getting punished for it. In
Right.
fact, being reported for it. But
Mhm.
uh but like
That's a
I
good
said,
point.
like I was never a deep thinker really whenever I was religious. Like I didn't really want to question it too much. And then when and to bring it back to like my church and my upbringing was like it was very racist and very like segregated. They wanted an us and a them. And my town's very tiny and there's like 6 churches in it. And so they're
Mhm.
segregating amongst their own, they're like,
Mhm.
no, the Methodist church, they're wrong. You got to stay up here at the
Yeah.
Ebenezer Baptist Church. We got it all right up here. And pay no attention that you can walk out the front door and throw a rock and hit the other church that believes the something that they don't believe. I don't even know what the discrepancy is there, but like we were, and then like the racism wasn't really outright, like they wouldn't just say the N word, from the pulpit or anything. But when you would hear the old guys talking after it was over, and I don't know how it was at anybody else's church, but at mine, like the old ladies would kind of group up outside, and the old men would kind of group up outside, and some of them smoked cigarettes and shit, and they would stand there and bullshit with each other, and then everybody would go back home. But I would hear the N word get tossed around among the old men quite often,
Mhm.
And there was at that point in time, I don't think there was actually any black people that lived in the town whatsoever. And I can remember it kind of standing out to me. I bought it, like I was buying it at that point, but I remember thinking there are no black people around here. How do they know that these black people are doing these bad things or these bad actors? And they don't have any examples of this. They don't know any black, because I would ask them like, well, where are they at? Like what's going on? Oh, well, we don't know.
Who did you wrong? Yeah, who did you wrong? Right? Yeah.
They fucked us all over, right? So where are they at, and how are they fucking us over? And like I could never
Mhm.
get a straight answer out of them with that. And then at 17, I joined the army, and by 18, I was overseas serving with people of all colors and all cultures and all races and religions, and that took a lot of it out of me, the majority of it out of me. And then I had a atheist team leader that he kind of he broke it down in a more gentle fashion that I could understand, of like, yeah, man, they can't all be right, but they could all be wrong.
Mhm.
They could all be full of shit. Maybe none of them have the right answer, because I was like kind of trying to go off into like the spiritual realm, and I remember I got into some kind of shamanism shit, some kind of Celtic shamanism. Like I started like researching my family's roots, and I'm like Scottish and Irish, so I started going through all that shit, and like it was definitely a journey, to say the least. It wasn't just okay, I don't believe in it, so all of it's fucking wrong and I'm an atheist now. Like I didn't even know what an atheist was until whenever I first saw the Atheist Experience, which would have been probably 1990, or no, it'd probably been 2000 or 2001. I think I saw a very early episode, and
And
then
I hear that a lot, and I was the same way, and I think that's a topic for like a group stream. Is like, it's such a straw man with the atheist arguments, and yet most of us, we didn't even know or care what an atheist was, right?
and I honestly still wouldn't if there wasn't so much in our like circles here that we exist in online. Like it's a big deal, you know, like people talk about shit and like the way I see it, like I was an atheist since for well, at least 20 years by now, you know. So it's like a lot of these people I just project my own atheism on them. Like I just assume that yeah, you've always believed this shit, you know. And then I realize, oh fuck, they're new at this. Like
Mhm.
you know, like and but like one of them that stands out to you know who Nitty is.
Yep.
Uh, he's so intelligent and so just. I think he's a real. Seems like a really good person to me. And he
Mhm.
expresses himself very well in his ideas. Expresses them very well. So to me, that it just meant that oh, he must have been doing this shit for a long time, but he's relatively new at
Mhm.
not believing and stuff, and has a really interesting story. And so I have to watch that I'm not projecting my atheism onto you or onto these other people that are new in it, or you know what I mean.
Yeah, that I've been trying to spread that too. That Gurr too. Gurr was a believer not too long ago, and
Mm,
you've got a lot of your big names like Paula Gia. It's been a few years, but he was literally knocking on people's doors, pushing Noah's Ark and everything else.
right.
And so, I've been trying to, keep it in my mind. And, I was, ornery at one point, and some days you feel a little ornerier and everything, but you got to remember, attack the ideas, not the person, because they can be, deceived, misinformed, whatever the reason is. And yeah, just because they believe it, and if they come and they're asking the questions or whatever, try not to make it personal and call them a dum dum or anything, because
Right.
as we've realized, when they leave it, they're they're perfectly intelligent people.
Did you see
So it
the
can't just be an issue of insulting someone's intelligence.
right? You don't get anywhere. You get an emotional response in return. You know, you give them an emotional attack, you're going to get an emotional defense response. I don't know if you saw Oz's stream the other night where there was a guy in there apologizing to all of us. His name was William something. I can't remember. I can't remember what his scream name was, but he was like very depressed. And at first, I was reading his comments and thinking this guy might be full of shit. You know, he might be trying to bait us into something because he was coming across as borderline suicidal, like very depressed, like. And we were like, "Well, what's up?" You know, and he started laying it out there that like, yeah, man, a week ago I was calling you guys all these horrible names and I feel terrible. And then somebody else in the chat vouched for him, like, yeah, I was talking to this guy. I can't remember who it was. And then Oz addressed it and said, hey, man, you know, like I think he gave him his phone number and, you know, like told him, like, get a hold of me. And, you know, there's a community here. It's okay. You figured out you're an asshole. That's the first step in not being an asshole is realizing that you're being an asshole. You know,
There you
the
go.
first
Yeah.
step in being correct is realizing that you're wrong, saying that you're wrong, and trying to take a step in the right direction. You know, so
And
it
it's
was.
and it's easy, and anybody can get into a dumpster fire. It's very easy, and
Mm-hmm. It
it
was
it
interesting
it
to see that
it's good
dude.
for clicks and everything, but yeah, it's not productive.
It was refreshing seeing that dude apologize. See it because I mean, how many times do you
Good for
actually
him.
see where we are? When do you see a Rebecca fucking tell you, "Oh, I was absolutely full of horse shit from this point to this point, and you know, I'm sorry." No, what they do? They go apologize to their deity for
Mhm.
wronging you. You know,
Or the
instead of
or the wrong
cutting that
people.
out,
Yeah,
cutting the
or the
middle man out, the middle deity out, and going straight to Dave and saying, "Hey, Dave, I'm sorry, man. I got a little wild last night and said some shit that was out of hand, you know, like instead of just doing, and that plain and simple would just correct the action right there. And you could, you know, have that human connection with someone else that
and I
you
and
get.
I've been there with some of my best friends. I mean, everybody butts heads at one time, but when you're
Yeah.
best friends, and then you can realize, hey, sorry about that, and you shake hands and say, hey, I still love you and everything. I shouldn't have said it that way or whatever. And then everything, everything's fine,
Yeah,
So
it strengthens that bond, and it can create a bond with a stranger. If I'm having the very first conversation that we had, and we get into just a little tiff, and I back off, and I'm like, you know what, you're right. You know what, I am being an asshole, and I probably shouldn't talk to you like that. You'd probably be like, oh well, shit. Oh, all right. Like maybe this
cool.
guy's okay. Like
Yeah.
that shows a little bit of character on your part if you're willing to be wrong.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Especially in the world of internet arguing, of you know what I mean, of it's such a weird indirect way of doing things, and it cuts out a lot of the actual emotional interaction back and forth. Is that we've got miles in between us, between these cameras, and you can say a bunch of crazy shit to each other, and you can get away with it, but
Mhm.
you've still got documentation of you being an asshole, on camera. But
And that's the thing. It's real easy to do, and it puts a little more effort when you got to control yourself and just stop for a minute, and it has, I'm gonna pull the age thing. The older I get, the more I realize that, okay, we've had all the arguments, and I'm not really interested in having all the arguments on my channel because they've all been had. So I'm more
right,
interested in talking about, where everybody's been and how their arguments have gone, and good and bad arguments and that kind of thing, because I'm a little burned out on it. And then you get the young whippersnappers that show up. No, no offense to young people,
no,
but
they got
they hear the
they
arguments for the first time and they want to start all over again. And it's like, oh, I don't have time for this,
I felt that way before I started the Pastor Blaster thing. And then I started kind of hanging out in the Pocket Locker community, and it started it started lighting that fire under my ass again, and making me
Mhm.
want to address these things. And then I was looking for a way to do it on my phone, and a way to do the I have to upload it, and you know what goes into it. And like, so I was searching for a specific thing, and I found this database of MP4 downloads of all these Southern Baptist preachers, and it's all the same shit I heard growing up. So like, it really, I was like, holy fuck, this is what I want to do, like. So like, that's what really motivated me to do that, because most of my shit up until then was like mushroom identification. Like, I was honestly like, that's what I was wanting to focus on, and I was wanting to focus on an outdoor, uh however you want to describe it. There's all kinds of names: bushcraft, outdoors, survival, whatever,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, like outdoor skills is what I
I
try
was
to
I was
keep.
struggling with it too. I was like, what do I call it that he does? He's
I,
outside. So that's what I
I'm
said. He's
not that
outside.
great at it either. I haven't got it nailed down completely, but what I noticed was, I won't say there are no non-believers doing that type of thing, but if there are, they're not outspoken about it. They're just not having a Christian cross hanging around their neck, and they're just not having scripture on their. But there are those ones out there, and there's a lot more of those that are religious than not. So it's like, I don't want a Jesus message with my learning how to make a fire primitively. You know what I mean? I don't. I want to teach that skill, and then not only that, I want to be inclusive to trans, LGBTQIA, all the minority groups that don't get that attention, because those communities online are majority white guys.
Mhm.
Majority white men is all that shit is. And I want white men, sure, but I want everybody. I want
Right.
everybody, and I want them to feel safe going out into the woods and being reliant on themselves. And that, because I find that to be I guess, comforting, like just in the real world, that my house could explode with all my shit in it and I could still be all right with, I have the skill set in my mind to go be able to acquire items and make shit out of them and survive by myself if I had to. And it's, the military drilled it into me, and then I modified and adapted it to civilian life a little bit, and decided that that's what I enjoy, and I've been doing it since I was a little kid. Like my dad and my grandfather took me out in the woods when I was a little kid, and I've been eating berries and grasses and stuff that's in the woods since I was a baby, So
Well,
it's
this
all,
is a great way to pass on, everything that you learned and everything. People appreciate it.
yeah. And I think it's useful. It may not be useful today. It may, but you may have watched that video at some point and learned something that you didn't even know you learned, and then you may find yourself in a situation that you needed, or you may have seen me say about the different things I carry in my pockets every day, and
Mhm.
you may decide, maybe I should carry something like that, and then it turns out you carried it and you needed it, and it turned out to be useful. Like just different stuff like that.
And
I like.
and it doesn't have to be that you're heading out, into the great white beyond somewhere, the great, up in Canada. What is it? The Great White North.
Right.
And you're just heading out into the serious wilderness. It can be something simple as going for a hike and getting lost, having your car break down, somewhere that's, in the outside of the city somewhere. There can be a
Yeah.
lot of, things where you can end up in that situation where you didn't intend to go out and be all outdoorsy and go 20 miles off the beaten path. One, I've seen a lot of the survival things and stuff. Civvies get lost in the woods. You take a couple steps in the woods, and if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to find your way, you can get turned around and lost, but real quick. And then it gets dark, and then it gets cold, and it doesn't
Yeah.
hurt to know at least a couple basic things just to keep yourself alive overnight.
Fire. If you're planning, because like survival, I'm trying to think of a brief way to put it, but like if day to day you're probably planning for hours. Like if you're going to put a bag in your car to prepare in case you break down or you would wreck over a hill somewhere and have to whatever, you're planning for hours rather than days. You know what I mean? For a bag in your car. And then if I'm going to what I'm carrying out on a day hike, I would probably try to bring enough that I could be all right for like 3 days, but like usually I don't carry more than 15 pounds. Like I don't carry a whole lot of shit with me because you can make stuff off the landscape most of the time if you know what you're doing. So like stuff like that. But like even yeah, I was even thinking about doing like uh self defense scenarios in a way, but like I wanted to make it to where it would be able to cross over from animal attacks to another human attacking you. You know what I mean? Just
Mm.
trying to break it down to basic instructions of creating or closing distance. For instance, if someone pulls a distance weapon out, whether it be a firearm or a long stick, you have to make a split decision. Am I close enough to get my hand on that? Can I reach and grab his wrist that has that weapon? And now I have it. Now I have it and I can point it over here and it's not threatening me. And I can
Mhm.
go to work with this hand and my knees and my forehead or whatever I got to do to get that away from him and make them stop. Or is it a bear attacking my dog? Or is it, what I wanted to try to think of a way. I haven't got it down the way I want it yet, but I was trying to think of a way to incorporate that as well.
Sounds
And I
good.
think I think the distance, because you're either going to want to create distance and get away, or you're going to want to close distance and attack. And if you decide that you want to close distance and attack, you have to do it with, you're fighting for your life, literally. If it's a bear will knock you down and start eating you. It doesn't care if you're dead yet. A mountain lion will try to ambush you and bite you in the back of the neck and kill you. It doesn't want to get its eye poked. It don't want to get fucked up. A bear just wants a meal. A bear just wants to eat you. And a bear will push you on the ground, hold your head down on this end, and just start eating your legs. While a lot of hikers are found with their lower extremities missing because a bear just held him down and ate him until he was full and left. So, like, that's the reality of nature. Nature don't care who you are, what you're doing, what you decided to do that day. Bear's hungry. Bear's going to fucking eat. And if you have to defend yourself against the bear, you're going to have to go scorched earth on that fucking bear and make it think or prove to it that you're a problem. This could cost me my eyes. This could cost me vital things that I need later in life, and I'm going to turn around and run away. But
speaking of animals, I just heard Lauren Boebert wants to pass some kind of legislation because she's up in arms over all the people being killed by wolves. Now, the way I looked it up is in over a 20-year study, like 20 some people have been killed by wolves globally.
I mean,
one was in the United States. One was in Canada. One was in India. I mean, so
yeah.
Have you ever had a wolf problem outside anywhere?
I have seen a mountain lion in real life. I've seen a black bear twice in real life out while I've been hiking, and I've seen coyotes, if I didn't say that. Those are pretty much what I got to worry about around here. A wolf, that's what I was going to get at. They're very fuck, I'm losing the word I'm trying to think of. They're pretty much in certain areas around here. You're not going to find a wolf in Ohio. You're not going to find a wolf in Mississippi. You're going to find them up north, near Minnesota, near Canada, up near the northern border, Montana and Colorado and shit like that. So you're going to be isolated to those areas getting your statistics. And Boebert's from Colorado, so I'm sure there are wolves there. But as far as them being a problem, I would say they would have probably more problems with bears there than they do.
Oh, it has to be. Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know, man. Like I would be much more worried about bears in that area, I think, than I would be wolves.
Well, it seems again that they're bringing up an issue that's not an issue. I mean,
well,
I've looked it up before. You know what kills a lot of people, and I always find it amusing? Cows.
Oh yeah,
cows squish the farmers all the time.
Yeah, they can be by accident.
Yeah, it's accidental. Yeah, they just get squashed by those huge animals.
That's a couple tons animals.
Yeah. and she's, these wool, and she was showing graphic pictures and everything, and there are attacks, but you can get attacked by a dog in your neighborhood too, so
who else pushed that was Sarah Palin back in the day. She was all about hunting from helicopters, shooting wolves from helicopters in Alaska and shit. And it's like, first off, who in the fuck has the money to rent or buy a helicopter and shoot animals from it on a regular basis?
Real sporting.
Yeah, super sporting. But I think what she's going to try to turn that into is an excuse for AR-15s to be sold to the public in mass quantities, because what do wolves do? They hunt in packs. What do you want to bet she's going to push that pack will be over 30? So you'll need those 30 round magazines, and you'll need that, that high cap mag, and you'll need the
for one person that's going to get killed by a wolf. One person. Now, if it's an issue, and like with you mentioned the coyotes, they're actually an issue. They're invasive. They're everywhere. They're up, they're
Yeah,
all around here too. But no, not one mention about that. They're going to bring up this, oh, wolf is scary. Everybody knows you've seen him in the movies and yeah, so you need big guns because the wolves are getting everybody. No, they're not. Okay. So everybody just public service message. Don't worry, the wolves aren't getting you. They're not
wolves
the
are
problem.
usually smart enough to stay away from us. They
Seems to
usually
be.
know. They usually know what the big apes are up to, and they want to keep a lot of distance in between us and them.
Yeah. Well,
Unless they see us limping and slacking out in their territory, then yeah, you might need to worry about it. But that goes back to that defense shit I was talking about. That's if you're out in their territory, you always got to know that too when you're hiking. You're out there in their land. They're not in your house. You're in their house. And
now I've heard, especially in bear country, you want to make a lot of noise and let them know you're coming and scare them off. Is that good advice?
it's good advice, but I would preface that if you see one and you're making noise and you're doing the things that you should be doing, and sometimes they say, make a big silhouette if you got, wave your jacket over your head and try to make yourself look bigger and more intimidating. That for a black bear is a good strategy. And maybe a grizzly bear, if he's far away and not really a threat. I don't even know about a grizzly bear because I don't encounter them. I'm very unlikely to encounter one around here. But I know they're a lot bigger and a lot more likely to be able to kill you quickly. So I wouldn't want them. I wouldn't want to draw attention to myself if it was just going to fucking charge me then, But I carry bear spray, which I think is probably a good idea for a number of reasons. For many hostile animals, I would imagine, are not going to like a face full of bear mace, from a human right down the line to a bobcat, a coyote, whatever. It gets hit in the face with that bear mace, I imagine it's going to rethink what it's doing. It'll stop a charging grizzly bear, so and it gives you that distance buffer a little bit. But what were we talking about before I went off into that shit?
We were just pointing out that it doesn't seem to be the wolves, that you've got a lot more animals to worry about out there than wolves.
And I bet it's going to go at a gun angle. I bet you it's going to get, and like I'm not anti-gun. Like I own firearms, but I am pro being highly fucking trained and highly proficient if you're going to have those things. And mine are locked in multiple ways and bolted to my wall. Like you would have to knock the wall out of my house to get them out of here. Like they are secured. And I don't. And like I see the fucking Proud Boy assholes marching around, open carrying, which I think is just garbage in multiple ways. You look like an idiot, you act like an idiot, you sound like an idiot. You're basically just waving your dick in everybody's face and acting like that's not what you're doing. Like if your firearm is a part of your personality, I think you need to rethink how you're living your life. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of them.
I agree. If you want to have a gun, you should be able to have a gun, and that goes for countries who have strict gun control. People still have guns if they follow all the rules and everything, and you can still have a gun.
We definitely need stricter gun control laws.
I don't have any problem with people hunting either. I have an issue with trophy hunting, but if it's legal, and especially if it's keeping the populations thinned out, and I know a lot of environmentalists and everything don't like to hear it, but in this day and age, it is just a harsh reality that some of these animals will starve because they just don't have the huge areas they used to have. So if they're taking them and they're eating them, and
and it goes back to the state. I mean, the hunters that are doing it legally and buying the licenses and the permits and they're doing it by the book. They are paying their money to the state for the state to then do conservation
Mhm.
to the lands, to the state game lands and different things like that. So it go as long as you're doing it by the book and you're not poaching, you're not
Right.
doing a way around. But if you're starving, I think you should be able to hunt for free. You know, if that's your only means of getting food, or you know, but those are rare cases, and I would imagine if I'm starving, I'm going to go hunting for food if that's my only means of food. Like that's what I'm going to be doing. Because if I got caught and sent to jail, well, then I would have food in jail. You know what I mean? Like they'd have to feed me there. So
And if you go to jail, you might find Jesus there too, because I've heard that's always a surefire way to find him is when you've hit rock bottom and you're in jail. So
I
I,
never found
I'm kidding, everybody. I'm kidding. It's just a joke. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I had a dude insult me in a store one time in the little town store. He he was trying to witness Jesus to me. Me and my buddy had this like ritual. We would lift weights at his house, and then there's this little burger shack attached to this Christian guy's store, and we'd work out at his house. We'd walk through the park, and there was pull-up bars there. We'd do our pull-ups, and then we'd continue to the burger shack, and we'd buy this giant friggin' hamburger, and with it was like a half a pound giant burger, and we'd go in and get like a drink, and we'd go back, and that was like our little routine we'd do. And this dude starts trying to talk to me about Jesus, and I'm like, I try to be polite because it's a really small town, and I go into that
Yeah.
store and buy shit. So like, I was
Don't,
like, nah.
don't want anybody spitting in your food or anything, right?
Right.
Right.
But pretty much. So I was like, no, thanks. I basically no thanks. Like I don't. And then he countered my no thanks with, well, I have a book that's basically he told me it was dumbed down and for prisoners because I guess the tattoos. I don't know. But he immediately considered me a prisoner and that I needed the dumb guy's Bible. And I didn't even know there was one, and I still haven't found one, but I guess there's an easy reading version or something that they give the prisoners. I don't know.
I never heard of that.
He offered it to me, and looking back, I should have took it, but I was so pissed and offended. I was just like, "Fuck you," and I walked out of the store. But like,
now it would make a great video. Yeah.
Yeah. But those might be out there. There might be some. And then I was wondering, like, what would that translation look like? If they reworded it even more, like what are they leaving out? Like what extras are they putting in? Like, I don't know. It had me thinking.
Well, I wanted to touch on one other thing too, and that's climate change. Whether you're a believer or you're not a believer, the climate is changing and it's a problem and it affects everything, including the beautiful forests and all the beautiful animals that live there. We're losing species like never before. And if you love the trees and if you have a religious thing with the trees and it's all from God or not, we should take care of the trees and all the animals out there in and under the trees and everything because it's their planet too.
And I think that's kind of where the Christian idea of an afterlife kind of shits on it, as much as they like to use look at the trees and look at nature and how could this all be here without a magic deity or whatever. But it's all disposable, right? It's all just going to burn and you're going to get poofed up into the clouds and it's all going to be happy times for you. And you get to look down here. And I mean, like by I forget what Old Testament verse it is, but we're going to all be burning and God is going to be pleased by the smell of the smoke coming off of us. The smoke's going to rise up to the heavens and he's going to smell our charred corpses and be pleased with it. But
what else? And keep in mind, though, they've been waiting for 2,000 years. So they've been waiting for 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's going to be another 2,000 years, well, that's another 2,000 years. You should be making sure that everything's okay for everybody waiting for Jesus for the next 2,000 years. It's not a good argument. And speaking of arguments, we're supposed to be talking about arguments.
We are. We got off in the weeds rather
Oh,
than
it's
the
good.
truth.
I wanted to talk about it, and I know you have a great interest in outdoors and everything, and you've got obviously good respect for nature and everything, and that's a good thing. And but I wanted to also talk about some of the arguments for God. So we've already covered look at the trees. You think when you see the trees that you're just seeing nature at work.
Yeah, I'm just seeing trees, and it's neat whenever you get to see it. It's all a system. Like the mushrooms that I go hunt grow on certain trees. So I know those differences. I know what a red oak is. I know what a white oak is. I know what the differences between these trees are because that is where the mushrooms grow that I'm hunting, and they grow under certain trees because they have symbiotic relationships with those trees in the soil. And it's all a big chain of existence, I suppose you would say.
The beauty of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the classic out in nature arguments is if you're walking along out in the woods one day and you find a watch on the ground, did you think that watch just appeared there naturally?
I would think it fell off of somebody's wrist, but um, I understand the watchmaker argument, and I think it's ridiculous for the simple fact that it's leaving out the next step, which would be, well, where did that watchmaker come from that they're talking about, right? So they're trying to say if you were walking down a beach and watches, I guess, never existed or whatever, and you found this watch sitting there ticking and obviously doing something, and it's obviously been made by something because of the little parts and the dials and things that you would use yourself. So yeah, but like what they're actually talking about is like the beach would be made of watches, and they found this one particular watch, and they like that one, and they like to say that, and they're ignoring all the other watches. But there's Hindu watches over there. There,
Mhm.
there's different watches out there, but they're really worried about this Christian watch, and it's got to be this Yahweh God, and it's got to be that they start into it like it's this wide open, it could be any god, but no, it's their God, it's never anybody else's. And they also they do, I don't know if it would be switching of definitions, because they like to act like there's tool marks in nature. You know what I mean? Like they'll say like, "Oh, well the watch has, you can see the tool marks on this watch that a man has used tools to make it, and if you look at it under a microscope, you can see that." But like when you do that with a living organism like a tree or anything, a grain of sand or a rock or whatever, if you get a strong enough microscope and start really looking down into the atomic structure and the different things that are going on, it's so much more complex than what they give it credit for. And not only that, but if you say that, okay, this watch had a watchmaker, so the watchmaker must have a maker that must be God, but now God don't have a maker. Well, how'd God get here? Well, he's always been here. Well, that's special pleading, and you're just making a special exception for your God, and fuck everybody else and what anybody else thinks. It's got to be that way. And I don't know. What do you think about it?
I think that's a pretty good explanation. Yeah. And I was going to say that kind of leads right into the next one, which is the God of the gaps, talking about all that we know and all that we don't know. And as soon as I'm sure you've ran into it, and most of us have ran into it, somebody will ask you a question. Where did you come from? And I say, well, my parents got busy one night, and 9 months later, there was me. Well,
Yep.
where'd your parents come from? And well, where, and you're gonna, back. And ultimately you're gonna have that one question, especially for us laymen that are not scientists, that are not physicists, that don't have the, precise, perfect scientific answer with all the details and the molecular formula to go along with it. Aha. God of the gaps.
Well, I think there's an error in thinking in the first place that we have to know everything. That we have to know everything, otherwise it could be this God. And it's like you don't. We're never going to know everything. So like that's their loophole, is that nobody ever knows everything. That's why there's multiple scientists over multiple fields of science constantly doing experiments, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a scientist. I don't know how to describe it that well, but I mean, Jay Bundy is. There's people you can consult. If I want to know about evolutionary biology, I can talk to Jay, and he knows what the fuck he's talking about. And not only does he know what he's talking about, the body of work knows what the fuck it's talking about. Jay is just someone who can convey those messages in a way that I can understand it. But that body of work is there, and you can read it yourself if you're not picking up what somebody else is saying. You can read that shit yourself and do the experiments and repeat the results. And like, that's what science is. But when you get into the world of religions, they try to call things evidence that isn't evidence. They try to say, well, they try to use the look at the trees argument as evidence. And like, as much, I mean, well, that's kind of getting back to where we were. But the God of the gaps, I was going to say, is almost an argument from ignorance, right? Because basically saying, I don't know, therefore God. Therefore God must.
And it's full stop. It's like, well, if it's that why go to the lab?
Right.
It doesn't get you anywhere. Yeah, why go to the lab? That seems to be a big problem.
I don't understand the lack of curiosity on their part sometimes, and I think it maybe it scares them because it's digging a little too deep into their preconceived Bible notions of how things should be. Like whenever Adam and Eve don't add up to evolution, that's a big problem with a lot of them. And I would say that would be where, like, if that, I don't remember if you said that was an actual conversation you were having where they asked you where'd you come from, and then where'd they come from, and were they trying?
I've been asked a lot. Yeah, where do you come from? And my answer is always usually kind of snarky. That when mommies and daddies love each other very much, sometimes they embrace, and then a baby forms in mommy's tummy. And so, and it, but if I'm serious, I'm going to say, that life is emergent. So that's my serious answer.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I would think that person that keeps asking that regressing question of where they come from, where'd they come from? They got to know they're going to hit evolution at some point. At some point, you're going to have to be like, well, then there was a thing that was kind of like a human, but not quite a human. And it bred with a thing that we would call a human now, but they were probably damn near the same thing. But
and let them do that. Let them explain as much as they can. Okay. Even if it's from a creationist perspective as to what, became what in whatever way. And then I'm going to throw right back. Yes, that's emergent. You got it. You just got to put it all together.
And you can always just throw at them that, hey, we're not scientists, and you can at least make them outright deny science and say, oh, well, scientists are just guys that are reading books, or they're just, and I got this book and you got that book. And because I've had that horseshit argument thrown at me too, that, well, you got science books and I got the Bible, like that's some kind of fucking checkmate atheist. I got this old book that has clearly been rewritten.
I've been on a couple of the Muslim channels, and guess what they tell me? The Bible doesn't have it right. The Quran does. So
That's
Yeah,
what.
it's a classic argument. You can just go from one book to the next and just say, well, no, that religion, see, my book says something different. And then that's one of my ones that I always hear too is Christianity is unique. Well, of course it is, because if they were all the same, they would all be the same. So,
But it's not like if you trace it back, it's they're borrowing from all these other prior religions. You know, they're
well,
stealing from all the surrounding cultures, and it makes sense because they had to get along with those surrounding cultures.
mhm.
You know, they had to take a little bit from this one and a little bit from this one, be like, yeah, you know, those guys have their holiday that they worship the golden cow, and we got ours that we worship this thing, and they got there, and like it seems like in a social dynamic, you would have to eventually get along with people that aren't of the same mind as you.
Well, in a
So
nutshell, I say that Paul made Judaism light. He basically it's the same, a lot of the same stuff, but you didn't have to follow all those rituals, and you didn't have to do all this and do all that, you know, and all that, because when they were transitioning from the many gods, like the, let's say, all the Roman gods, and you had to spend every day of the week worshiping this one, worshiping that one, sacrificing, bringing flowers and burning incense. And then they said, well, nope, nope, let's go to monotheism with one God. And everybody said, I don't have to take care of all those gods, you know, every day of the week, every day of the month, whatever it is.
yeah,
But then you had the 613 rules, and it's like, oh man, I'm not getting anywhere. I still got to do this and this, and the curtains got to be just right, and it's got to be pleasing smells and everything. And then Paul kind of said, well, yeah, you don't really have to follow all that. Just do the main things, like don't kill each other, and then, well, you can eat what you want, wear what you want. It's okay.
yeah. Back to what you were saying though about the Muslims. What caught my attention was I got into an argument on Uncle Bobby's Discord with a Muslim, and he was an apologist, and it was really striking to me how similar their techniques are, because I was thinking like, man, I don't know shit about the Quran. Like I couldn't tell you a fucking verse out of the Quran. I couldn't do it. You know, I can't tell you what fucking Allah said. I couldn't tell you what Muhammad said. I couldn't tell you shit. But I took to it like it was swimming. You know what I mean? Like it was just like swimming in a different type of water, you know, because
Mhm.
it was the same arguments.
Yep.
You just replace Jesus with Muhammad or Allah and God with Muhammad or Allah, and it's all the same shit.
Whenever the topic comes up, what's your favorite? If they ask, what would you like to see more in the debates? And I always say I like the theists from different religions in the debates,
Yeah.
because it's really hard for them to use the same arguments against each other, and they've got to be creative. Otherwise, yeah, you can just go in and you just say, well, you're an atheist, straw man, blah, blah, blah. But when they're both, you know, going to try to use the same arguments that, well, my God, well, no, my God, it gets really interesting.
Yeah. It on the same level as like a Mormon and a Christian debating, or you know, something like that. I think there's a lot to learn by us atheists by watching debates like that, by watching the Southern Baptist debate the Presbyterian. You know, like, well, you know, because they know that you want to know why Presbyterian's wrong, go ask a Baptist. You know, go ask one of these preachers to nitpick these, you know,
Yeah.
and like that's where you're going to find their little discrepancies, and how somebody's spinning this word in the Bible to mean this thing and they're saying that it don't, or that baptism's the way to get to heaven, and you've got to be dunked, you can't be sprinkled, you've got to be dunked, you can't be, you know, there's all
But
these.
when they're being friendly, though, when everybody wants to be friendly, they'll say, well, it doesn't really matter. We all love Jesus.
Yep.
But yeah, behind closed doors, it's like they're not going to heaven. Nope, they're not either. They ain't doing it right. They ain't reading it right. They ain't praying it right.
Hmm. Yeah, it's I, and but like you said, they won't use the same arguments on their fellow Christian.
Right.
and they won't. I noticed they will, though, try to take from their pastor's sermon and use that on us. You know what I mean? And not, I don't think they fully understand that that pastor's sermon isn't designed for us. That pastor's sermon is designed for them. That pastor's sermon is designed to keep their asses in those pews and keep those pocketbooks and those wallets open and putting it in that golden plate. And like, that's what that sermon is designed for. That is not to win the atheists over to your fucking side. That is to get fence sitters to stay there. And that's to get doubters, but people that were raised in it that still have that lingering indoctrination to be like, yeah, I think I ought to go back and get that warm, fuzzy feeling again. You know, like at least my opinion. That's my opinion about it.
And let's turn a little bit to fine tuning, because fine tuning can go both ways. Fine tuning can actually be a very good argument for God if it's used correctly. And it can also be a very bad argument for God for the same reasons, because people don't use it in the correct way. They try to mix it between what physicists call fine tuning and what religious folks call fine tuning. You think there's a difference there?
See, now I didn't really give this one much thought, but my initial reaction was like kind of like the mud puddle argument, if you've ever heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Like how the mud puddle is like, look at this pothole. This pothole was designed perfect. I fit in it perfect. You know, like this was obviously designed by me or for me. This is obviously fine tuned to fit just the amount of water that I am in this pothole. So, it wasn't all the cars that hit that little ditch over and over and over again until it widened to that point and then it rained enough to fill it. You start with the thing and then you work backwards to make it all fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're confusing that with fine tuning. And honestly, with most, if not all, religious arguments that I've ever encountered, there is some emotional appeal to it. There is no way to eliminate emotion from it. And sometimes if you do, that's all there is. All they have is a feeling that this shit is right. Because when you dig down to, well, why do you think that's true? The Bible says it. Well, why do you think the Bible's true? Well, I just feel it. I just feel it in my heart. I just, like I've had that shit, thrown at me a million times. Like it should be respected, like it's like your heart pumps blood. You can have your heart you can have a feeling in your heart region. Like you can have an adrenaline dump. There's things that can happen that'll make you think, but your heart's really not making you think things. Your brain makes you think things. So you're not, it's redefining things and using organs as magic, because we can all agree that we have a heart, but they have to take it that step further and give it that magic attribute that you feel Jesus in your heart. You don't just have a heart, but you can do detective work with your fucking heart. You can suss shit out with your heart, and like you can't. That's not how shit works. But
and that kind of goes to where they say where the morals come from if you don't get them from a book.
I would just say that it comes from society. Like for instance, in certain Asian countries, they eat dogs. We don't do that here. We would find that abhorrent for the most part. I would. I have been to countries where they do eat dogs, and you can find it on the menu at a fucking McDonald's. But now, the morals that we have here that would keep us from eating dogs because we enjoy them as pets and companions and friends, they don't have those over there. or some of them do and some of them don't. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Just poverty, for one. Maybe that's the only animal they have to eat over there. Like, I don't know. But, and it's, I don't agree with it, but that's what certain cultures are doing, and they do find it to be morally correct. I disagree.
And they change though. A lot
Yeah.
there, a lot of societies will decide one day, we probably shouldn't be eating dogs anymore, and things will change. So a lot of these things are not set in stone either.
Oh no, and that's not to disparage Asian people or anything of the kind, because there's Asian
No.
people right there protesting it. They're right there protesting that and against it. They are pro dog and anti eating dog. So I don't want to, be mistaken for lumping all people into a category or anything.
Well, no, and there is the argument that food is food, and we have to just kind of decide, as a society, which animals we think are food and which are not. So, and then you can go to the vegetarians and the vegans, they're going to say none are. So, extend the argument. So, but it's all fair. The arguments are all valid. Everybody's got good arguments, pro and con. But we're going to decide dog's man's best friend around here. So that's how we treat him.
Yeah. And I think if you just extrapolate from that idea, that's pretty much how our morals came about, was groups of humans getting together, discussing, hey, did you notice what's his name over there killed the other guy? We think that's wrong, right? Yeah, we all think that's wrong. We should throw that guy out, right? Yeah, we should throw that guy the fuck out. Like, I think that's how, eventually it became a set law. Hey, you don't fucking murder each other. We don't do that. Like, stop it. If you do, you either go out there or we're going to have to lock you up, or, whatever. And then eventually that evolved to you go to prison now.
And that kind of touches on, if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? And it's like, well, because we're different monkeys. That's all.
Right, back to your wolves. Goes back to your wolves. If all the dogs are fucking came from wolves, why are there still wolves? Because they're breeding populations that evolved, and we are breeding populations of a type of ape that has evolved to have less hair than the other apes, and to have, certain characteristics that the other ones don't have. And we don't have our big toe don't look like a thumb that we can grab with, you know what I mean? Like, on our feet. It'd be kind of cool if we did. Like, I wish I could run up a tree with all fours, but like, and that's another thing. It goes to, like, they look at the chimp like it is a lesser.
That's what I was just going to ask. Why is it
perfectly evolved to its habitat right there? Its little niche that it is existing in. That chimp is king shit in chimp land. You know what I mean? Like, so just like humans are king shit in human land for the most part, that's how it is there. And then grizzly bear is going to be king shit in grizzly bear land, and it's like, that's how it is. And to give us divinity, to give us this, our specialness is our brain. And I think we are bastardizing our brain by the religious thought that rattles around in there, that we are dismissing actual evidence and experiences and adventures and all kinds of shit by saying, God did it, or, well, the Bible says this, so I'm not going to look any farther. I'm not going to explore anymore. I'm not going to, I'm just going to settle for this ancient Bronze Age answer.
Well, speaking of God did it, what about when somebody says that God talked to them?
See, now that's a tough one. I mean, as goofy as it sounds to me, you know what I mean? As goofy as it sounds, I remember what I considered God talking to me whenever I was a Christian, and it was a feeling. It wasn't an audible voice, but I would bet there are and this is not to be ableist, but there are schizophrenic people that hear voices and that can attribute them to gods. So there could be mental disorders that could potentially be a reason for it. Or, like I was saying with myself, I was conflating like a warm, fuzzy feeling with a God telling me something. But in my mind, whenever I was talking to this, what I was perceiving as God, I would ask a question in such a way that it would almost give me that feeling by asking the question. I was almost getting excited, and I was getting in that mode anyway. And then I ask the question to God, and I walk outside and I look up, and the sun shines just right through the clouds and it makes that perfect little hole where the sun rays shoot out, and there's enough condensation in the air where it makes the rays look real thick. I don't know how many times I thought God talked to me with some shit like that. You know what I mean? Whenever I was young, like I thought, there he is. There he is. That thing I was thinking about. That's what he's doing. He's telling me right now. And like looking back, I mean, it's silly as fuck. It's crazy, and talking about myself, but like when someone else comes up to me and tells me that, it's hard for me not to just be like, look, I've been there, and I think that's silly because I think you just had a feeling, and because it almost goes to the way they try to tell us we were never really Christians. It kind of dabbles in those waters. You're kind of telling somebody they didn't have an experience that they are saying they had. So I hesitate to totally shit on somebody's personal experience, but I also try to convey that that's just personal experience, and can we be wrong with our human senses, our human ways we detect things? Could you be wrong? And some of them will just flat out tell you no, they can't be wrong because they had that feeling, and that feeling was, that's it. Like, so I don't know how to really deal with the personal experience stuff, other than me personally, I dismiss it in my own mind as, oh, that's just personal experience. But to that person, they think they got something there, like the feeling of being correct is the same one as being wrong until you figure out that you're wrong. And then you're like, oh fuck, I was being dumb. But like back when I thought that way, I thought that way. So it was, I don't know. It's how do you deal with those type of things?
I I would usually defer to the T-jump argument that you have to come up with a method that can differentiate between the real and the imaginary.
Yeah.
So I think you and I both agree that people do have experiences, but how they are explained is the gray area, because it's really difficult to determine if it was just a voice in your head or if it's actually a divine voice in your head. How do you tell the difference?
Yeah.
So if you can provide a way that we can, distinguish between the two, but there doesn't seem to be a way.
Right. And for the most part, if you really dig into the voice per se, it wasn't really a voice. It was usually a feeling. It was usually a
Mhm.
scenario, like I said, they saw a bird and they thought it was their dead grandma, or they saw they got a feeling and they saw this beautiful red bird, and that must have been, because I've had people around here tell me this shit. That's why I bring up the birds, because people tell you to look at the birds
Or
around here.
or they
They
heard God speaking in Old English because for some reason God only speaks like the King James Bible. So,
Well, I forget who did it, but somebody brought up to somebody that was talking about the Bible and why the Bible, what version they liked, and it was the King James version. And they're like, well, you know, King James was probably either a homosexual or a bisexual because he had male partners that were very young, that it was obvious what the fuck was going on back then. There's like old writings about King James and what he was doing. He also had some of the first witch hunts before we had him over here, I think. And, you know, there's things about just the people alone that translated their Bible. And it would be like having the President Trump version of the Bible today. What the fuck was a king? What the fuck was a king?
I think we do have that. That's the whole problem.
We're getting it. You know what I mean? Like that's a power person. That's a position of authority. Taking your holy scriptures and being like, nah, fuck that. We'll keep this. Put this word in here. Throw this out. Throw that out. Like King James, the king, went over your holy text and decided what you got to read. Mm-hmm. So how the fuck did that seem like a great idea? And how do you think that you have the inerrant word of God now? Like that, not to mention the Council of Nicaea or whatever it was, and Constantine, and you know, there's
Bart Ehrman said basically that you've got 800 years before they really have a Bible like we have today. So it's not just a matter of, you know, the years since Jesus and the years since they wrote it and the years since they, you know, decided which ones. You're talking centuries and centuries and centuries of this stuff going before you put together a book. So
the Apocrypha, the 14 books of the Apocrypha were in there up till late 1800s, like almost early 1900s.
The Catholics have what, another 6-7 books in theirs too. So
they keep some of the Apocrypha, some of the ones they have tossed. So then you get, I mean, shit, there's been wars, you know, many years long wars fought between Catholics and Protestants because of that, you know, and they still don't know who the fuck's right because they're still Catholics and they're still Protestants. So, you know, it's like nobody figured nothing out. Their divine revelation never happened. Like, so I just, it's crazy being on the outside looking in, but at the same time, the ones that are these fervent believers, like, I don't doubt that they believe what they're saying to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of trying to get them to take a step back from whatever you would call that and take a look at it. But I think that is also possibly a human trait that some people don't have. Some people may not be able to take a step back and look at themselves in a critical manner. But I could be wrong. I don't know. That's me speculating.
Well, that goes on to the next one. Speaking of taking a step back, is God answers prayers. And as you look back, like you were talking, that hey, show me a sign, and oh, look at the beautiful sunset or the beams coming through the clouds, or the butterfly that landed on my knee, right?
Mm.
But you have to bring up the big issues of, okay, God help you find your keys, but there are starving children in the world. There are ill children and desperately praying parents for their ill children. And is God really answering these prayers, or are the priorities totally out of whack?
Oh, well, I mean, hey, the Steelers won, right? I was praying for that. I'm just fucking around, but you know what
hey,
I mean?
My Dolphins had a good year, so I was a happy fan.
I'm just making a joke, you know what I mean? But like, God seems to really be worried about the NFC playoffs. He seems to be really worried about finding someone's car keys. He doesn't really seem to give a shit too much about the the parasite that lives inside the eyeballs of children in Africa, or you know, just the rampant child abuse of multiple forms of child abuse in the church in his name. Like I don't, if I were a deity that made this creation and I looked down from above and I saw them doing these things in my name, at the very least I would show up. I might not wipe them all out and kill them. Maybe I'd be merciful. Maybe I would say, look, assholes, and snap my finger and poof all the guns away and be like, you're stuck with Nerf baseball bats from now on, you little assholes. And, just if you're an all powerful deity, it's limitless what you could do to fix all the problems with just a snap of your fingers. And none of it ever happens. But God is love, and God is all knowing and all loving, and it's just like, holy shit, man. Like, you will do anything to contort your brain into a way to excuse your beliefs or your God or whatever.
And that one rolls right into, but my guardian angel saved me in the car accident. I saw my guardian angel. They were there with me as the EMTs and the fire department and the police were prying me out of the car with the jaws of life they invented and saved my life.
See, I usually won't. It's another one of those subjects you kind of got to tiptoe around depending on how fresh that event is for that person, I would say. If somebody's fresh out of a very traumatic event and they think God saved them, I'm probably just not going to say shit to them. Like, I'm probably just going to say, I don't know.
Glad you're still here, right?
Glad you're here, dude. Yeah. Like, but now if it's 10 years down the road and they want to tell me about they saw their guardian angel and shit, then I might dig into it a little bit and be like, are you sure you weren't deprived of oxygen? Are you sure you weren't at a giant loss of blood and oxygen to your brain, and not to mention just the sheer trauma of the event that happened, like just stuff like that. And like me personally, like a little over 2 years ago, I had a near-death experience. I haven't really talked about it too much, but I nearly bled out. I had to tie a tourniquet on myself, and it got really, really hairy. Like, my vision was blacking out, and like I had a giant pool of blood around me. Like, it was bad. And luckily where I was out hiking, and where I was at, someone heard me yell for help, and they came and helped me. I got to my car and was able to get to a life flight helicopter and get life flighted to Columbus, and went to Wexner and had surgery. And now I got a titanium leg from the knee down, or a titanium shin bone, I should say. I don't have a prosthetic, but you know what I mean?
Right.
But
well, we're glad you're still around too. Thanks, docs, for fixing him up.
Yeah, Wexner Medical Center. Although I heard there's some shady shit behind that Wexner name, but we won't even get into that. I heard something about that and I can't even remember what it was. But I was pretty damn close to dying. Like, I lost a lot of blood. I didn't hit an artery, luckily. Like, I don't know how I missed it, but it didn't get the artery. And so it was just all vascular bleeding, but I lost a lot of it. I forget how many units of blood I took once they got me stabilized. But when that was happening, I was in such a I knew what needed to be done from military training that I've had in certain first aid things. So I knew I needed to put a tourniquet on. I wanted it above my knee in case my leg didn't make it. I wanted it, I wanted to save my knee joint in case I had to have a prosthetic or whatever the case might have been. So I remember I was having clear thoughts while it was going on. And I can remember I took a scarf like this, like one of these, and I tied it around my leg and stuck my walking stick between it and my leg, and I started cranking it around to tighten that down. And I stopped the bleeding that way. And I cranked it. I remember my vision went from going completely blacking out to coming back to full color to blacking out to then it was just going to black and white. Like I wasn't seeing in color anymore. And then as I was cranking that stick around and applying more pressure and more pressure, it was like it all kind of twisted back into focus. Color came back, and it was like, you're back in the game, son. You know, it's time to play your cards right and get your ass to the fucking hospital. So I like turned it around and I tied that stick to my leg to keep it where it was.
Mm.
And I tried to get up and walk, and my bone was sticking out of the front of my shin, and I couldn't go. So I was crawling towards my car. Whenever the guys came down, they were working on a barn, and they heard me yell, and they came down and they helped me in my car, and they one of them drove my car while me and my dog were in the back seat and got me to the hospital. And I called my son while I was on the way, and it was a fucking crazy mess. But not once did I pray. Not once did I think that a God was going to save me. I knew who was going to save me. It was going to be me, because I was the only motherfucker there.
You focused and you did what had to be done.
And there was not a fucking. And I think at that point, if I would have tried to pray, or if I would have tried to ask a God for something, I would have died. I think I would have lost the rest of my blood, because, like I said, whenever I started applying pressure, I was blacking out. I was going out. It wasn't that I was passing out. It was just life was leaving me fast, and I had to do something.
And they say shock can kill you more than your injury can. So it helps to stay focused and do what you got to do.
When I got to the ER, they told me I was in shock, because I was talking to them like I'm talking to you, but I was shaking. I was cold, and I was like shaking, and they were like, I was like, I can't quit shaking. They're like, you're in shock, sir. Like you have had a lot of trauma happen to you. Like you're doing great. Just calm the fuck down, and like take these IV fluids, and you're going to be fine. And like it was a harrowing event, but if I would have took, I think if I'd have took 5 seconds to try to ask a God for anything, I'd have been fucked. And then whenever I was on my way back, whenever I was in the car trying to remain conscious, I would just enter my code on my phone to like unlock my screen on my phone. I just kept repeat entering that, unlocking my screen and shutting it off, entering that code, and I was just recalling that number. You know what I mean? I was just making my brain do something while I was trying to get to where I was going, so I could remain conscious. Because I wasn't going to rely on the guy that was driving my car either. I was pretty sure it was up to me.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking for a little bit, so I wanted to check the chat and say hi to everybody real quick.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad everybody joined us.
Hey, well, we got Bree's in the chat saying hi. Hello, Bree.
Hey, Bree.
Bree said, she said, I am only an atheist because it takes too long to explain where I stand. And I think that's a lot of us.
Yeah.
Casey, Randy, Matt and Jimmy rescheduled to fit your schedule. See, I told you. I just had to get with them and tell them, look, I got trees coming on at 3:00. Y'all are gonna have to just reschedule. So good to see you, Randy. Pragmatic Crystal, good to see you. Chris Moore, good to see you. Randy said, I just don't ever think about this type of survival stuff. Well, you might want to, just give a little bit of thought, because you never know. You have a flat tire somewhere and your spare's flat too. You might spend the night in the woods. So.
Yeah, if it ain't your thing, it ain't your thing. I ain't trying to push it on people. It's something I'm into, and I think I think my energy spent a little bit better doing that than debating philosophical deepities to some Southern Baptist asshole somewhere.
Pragmatic Crystal says, I see gators daily. Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with no gators either.
No, they'll just eat you too. They don't care.
Bree says, are we talking ecology? A little bit. Randy said, I'm not in a hurry to die, but that sounds better than having to be armed and ready for violence or whatever. I think he's talking about the self-defense.
I wasn't even really trying to talk about being armed. I was talking more along the lines of if you run into an asshole on a trail somewhere that maybe wants to fuck with you for being a member of the LGBTQ community or something like that, just how to either create distance or close distance, because you either want to get away from that person or you want to get close enough to them to be able to get away from them. But I really wasn't trying to promote violence.
Let's see. Yeah, Randy said he's just jesting. Yeah, it would be beneficial if shit hit the fan, don't get me wrong.
I've had jobs where being violent was the job. You know, in the army, I was in the infantry. I've been a bouncer in clubs and bars and heavy metal venues. Like, I've had to violently.
This is the Roadhouse guy right here.
I've had to be violent with people before. Like, I don't want to go outside and hurt people. You know, I don't want to run around being the tough guy and doing, you know, like, that ain't my fucking thing. There's plenty of the fucking super whatever the fuck alpha males out there with channels that you can go for that shit, you know. Like, I don't find it necessary, but to flex and act cool. But like, sometimes if even if you don't want to be violent, sometimes violence will find you. And if you're not prepared enough to at least defend yourself and making enough room for you to get away, you know, you could get into serious trouble, in my opinion.
Well, speaking of, Pragmatic says, I have had a black bear cross my porch. Yeah, that's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. I've got black bear poop out in my yard right now as we speak. So I know they're out there. I haven't seen one in my yard yet, but I know they've been through it.
Bree said, once upon a time, you could find wolves across the nation. And wants to know, is Boebert going after wolves? Yeah, we think she's just trying to push some fear into people that the wolves are coming to get you. But when I looked it up, like I said, one person's been killed by a wolf, and how long, I don't think we have much of a threat. When we were talking earlier that, you know, cows are squishing farmers all the time, so you got more of a threat from a cow than you do from a wolf.
And they're such a rare animal. They were just taken off the endangered list, I believe. Like, they're such a rare animal to see that I can't imagine you're going to have a problem with them. You know,
and they messed up how many environments taking them out, because as soon as they took them out, then all the, you know, the rabbits or whatever their prey is, then they all take over because they don't have their predators, and they mess everything all up. Then they have to spend all the time and the money to bring the wolves back and get them reintroduced again. So yeah, let's think before we just, you know, start shooting them all from a helicopter. That's just right. That don't work.
Yeah, we need conservation more than obliteration when it comes to even problem species. You know what I mean? Like, but I understand, like, down in Florida, they have a big problem with iguanas now. Like, There's iguanas
Oh,
all
yeah.
up in the trees, like big iguanas and
There's
aggressive iguanas.
there's a bunch of channels, and that's all they do is go out and hunt them and then they're always running into people calling the police, and they have to explain to the police, no, we're allowed to do this because they're invasive. And yeah,
And
I
most
don't know
of the
how
time
many
it's air
channels
rifles.
taking them out.
Yeah, most of the time it's air rifles that look
Yep.
really similar to a real gun. So
Yep.
it scares the shit out of people. So they ought to paint them orange or something. I don't see why they don't just paint the guns bright pink or some shit so you can, oh, that's clearly not a regular thing,
Yeah.
like why scare the shit out of your public. But
Yeah. Pragmatic said, I already know the animal's agenda. People are iffy. Can't always read people. Randy says he never leaves without his American Express card. Don't leave home without it. He got you covered. Yeah, Bree. Yeah, the way she was, and Bree is angry. She's, people are going to go shoot some wolves now for no dang reason, and that's just, it's not cool to just,
no
especially
one,
when they're not even a threat. Like it was one thing if they were actually harming a lot of people, but they're not.
no. And like I said earlier about the bear mace, grizzly bear mace, I believe would work on a wolf. Bree, if you know for some reason why grizzly bear mace wouldn't work on a wolf, I would be open to hear it. But I would think that would be just as good, just as effective on a grizzly bear, a human, a wolf, a coyote, a bobcat. I would think damn near anything would be repelled by that type of thing.
Yeah, and Randy says on the brighter side, the wolf population has recovered well after reintroduction near Yellowstone. So Bree says people just don't get killed by wolves. That is not something that is just happening. That is why when it happens, it is international news. Right. Yeah, there's one in this country, one in this country. That's the numbers I found, is that in a whole country, one person may get killed by a wolf, which I think you might have domestic dogs that might do more harm than that. So
Or like you said, the coyotes around here actually do damage to people's livestock and pets, but and bobcats sometimes, but bobcats are really rare around here. And I've seen two mountain lions, or it might have been the same one for all I know, but they're very, very rare around here. So like just I don't know. So it's like it would be the same difference like if around here if everybody got up in arms about mountain lions. There's literally maybe two in this fucking county, and like if everybody started shitting their pants and getting mountain lion guns, it would be ridiculous. And that's what Bobert's trying to induce in Colorado is a panic over wolves when there doesn't need to be. And they have just got, like Randy said, they've just got their population back to a good solid number, and
yeah,
now we can
some
hunt them.
idiot out there shooting them for no reason, right? And that's where Andy said, yeah, they'll just be out hunting them, and it's like, no, and just leave them alone. They're fine.
They're doing a job. Let them do their fucking job.
Yeah, Randy said with a grizzly, it makes you lunch. So yeah, just spread some ketchup mustard on yourself. Pragmatic said, yeah, it's a type of mace. We're talking about the bear mace, but yeah, bear mace is some good stuff. And nowadays, there used to be a lot of problems, but in a lot of places now you can carry it. I know in Ohio you can carry it. So check with your local rules, but a lot of places are allowing you to carry mace a lot more than they used to. And let's see. And Melody Joy. Good to see you, Melody Joy.
Yeah, I'm glad you're out there, Melody.
B.S. Lewis.
What's up, BS?
SJ's in the chat. Good to see you, SJ. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a good chat going out there.
And we got Slew Suffer.
I know that guy.
Slew Suffer. Is that
Yeah.
where that? Slew Suffer.
That's my brother.
Oh, that's your brother. All right, good deal. Paul sold the cult to the pagans. Yep. You cannot talk about the fine tuning whilst you cannot talk about fine tuning all the while special pleading. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what Tree said. We got cause and effect, the soul. Yeah, let's see. If people would research how their Bible was composed, well, yeah, there's pretty much an assumption that this is how the Bible is. It was always this way, and since day one the earth started, it's always been this way, and they just have no idea that it hasn't been like that at all.
And a lot of times they are relying on their pastor to read it to them. A lot of them have no, because I've talked to Christians and I'll be like, well, what about in Hosea where it says to smash the babies' heads on the rocks? It doesn't say that. And I will show them where it says it, and they are literally shocked because they've never read their Bible. They've always had a person of authority tell them. They get told the Bible. They don't read it and comprehend it.
The AR says he's late, but he's here. Hello. How you doing, AR? Good to see you. All right. I think I covered pretty much it. Everybody's questions and whatnot. So let's touch on a few more of these here, and then we'll wrap things up because we don't want to go too long. Let's see what are some of the good. We'll just kind of roll through here and touch on some of the good ones real quick, and you can we'll do a rapid fire. How's that?
All right.
All right. You can't disprove God.
That's what, like, you can't disprove or you can't prove a negative, right? Like that's what that goes into. You can't disprove Bigfoot either.
All hail Bigfoot.
That's right.
You see him watching right there, right?
Oh, I do now.
I do have a Bigfoot. Yes, I do. Where does life come from?
I would say the simple answer would be other life, but then you would have to get to the abiogenesis event, right? Isn't that what it's called?
Yes.
So that's where we kind of stop with our knowledge, right? You know, we don't really know what was before space and time because there was no way to detect it. So,
well, you totally ruined the next one. What was before the Big Bang?
The simple answer is I don't know. You know, and like a lot of times I think that's an uncomfortable spot for people with saying I don't know.
And that leads right into the next one. Science doesn't know everything.
I don't know that science ever claimed to know everything, or, you know, that I suppose scientists ever claimed to know everything. But like, that's kind of the point of science, is to learn what's going on, and science changes with the information and the data that it receives. And it doesn't really, basically science just mirrors the data to you in a way that you can digest it, right? Like science doesn't have an agenda. Like they try to act like, oh, like there's some kind of big science out there that's got an agenda to try to make you believe things that aren't godly or whatever the fuck. It's just like, no, science is just reporting what is there. And if you want to spin it into your Jesus made it happen that way, then you can, I suppose, but there's no data to that. You have to add magic to get there. but we got the data, we've got that, and if it doesn't cover something, well, they're trying. I say we, I'm not a fucking scientist. Like, I don't know what the fuck. But, you know, and that's another thing. Like, I think, I guess you could, I don't know how to phrase it, but like, I would defer to the experts in the field. And they can try to pitch their slippery slope argument that, well, you know, they're just reading out of a book and we're just reading out of a book. And how do you know that the science, and like, I would just say, because science is demonstrable. If it's a working scientific theory, there are experiments that you can do to get to where they are currently at.
And that's the next one then, is it says so in my book and it says so in your book. What's the difference between their book and a science book?
I would say evidence. Science is testable and has evidence. And they say, see, this is where I kind of get worried about my wording, is because they think they have evidence. And I just say that what they're calling evidence isn't, by definition, just isn't evidence. Like, it's not
Well, it can be, but it is very, very weak, circumstantial hearsay, which is the very, very weakest form of the evidence standard, if you would call it that.
And it's so sloppy, though. You know what I mean? Like, science is, like I said, for one, the repeatability of science is what makes it sound. You know, it's not just that Jay Bundy is doing an experiment and I'm saying that it's true because Jay Bundy is doing it. I'm saying it's true because it's repeatable, because we can look at Jay's body of work, and if we have all the stuff to do it in the lab setting and everything, we can do it. We can repeat it.
We can do it, right?
Yeah, and that's where their shit falls through. We can't.
But then that goes to the next one, though, as we're talking about it. But it's only a theory.
That's where they switch definitions. That's where they switch the colloquial definition of theory and the scientific definition of theory, where the colloquial definition is basically, I got a wild ass theory that aliens abducted me one night and I wasn't just really drunk and passed out in a cornfield. They dropped me off there.
And where is that corn cob anyway?
Yeah. That Budweiser makes my ass sore. but you know what I'm saying? Like, they're saying that's a wild conspiracy theory that aliens abducted me and did this shit. Or there's probably evidence, a trail of beer cans and some other shit pointing to something else. But that's not the kind of theory that science is talking about. You know, right. A scientific theory, and see, I'm not a scientist, so I can only say my understanding of what a scientific theory is. But the important thing about a scientific theory is it will change if you can show the evidence. If you can conduct the experiment and show the evidence to the contrary of what Jay Bundy's doing in a controlled environment like he's doing, you can show your experiment doing a thing that his isn't, or whatever the case may be. And I don't want to speak for Jay either. I'm just using as a scientist as an example.
Hey, but we all love Jay, and Jay don't mind getting a shout out, right, Jay?
I would imagine
Jay's always good with a shout out. We love Jay.
But if he was provided some evidence in his lab setting, Jay's going to look at that and be like, oh shit, yeah, you know, this is, you've got something going on here. We got to keep repeating this and getting the results and making sure. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't see scientists they don't get dogmatic over it. If you've got better evidence, they want to see it. In their field, they would be excited to see some new shit. You know, like, I would imagine that would be some of the coolest shit ever. You know, if you've been studying this shit for years and all of a sudden somebody walks up with some absolutely new results to a test that you've been running, you'd be like, what? You might be skeptical and kind of leery at first, but if you can then take it and repeat it in your lab, well, fuck, now we got something.
Then
Now
you
we got
got
something
then you
to
got
work with.
a Jay Bundy law.
Right. Or
Yeah.
yeah, a theory at least.
You're immortalized. Yeah, or a
And
theory.
a
Yep.
scientific theory is one of the highest levels of a thing you can have. You know, it's not just some wild ass theory. You have put in the work, you have got testable results, and it's not like how they like to say that basically it's just a guess, that you're just stringing some shit together and making a wild guess.
Let's see, where was I? Okay. Most people believe in a God.
I don't know if that's true. I would say, I mean, atheists are definitely outnumbered. Um, so yeah, but I said before, like we they could all be wrong. You know, a whole lot of people can believe in wrong shit. Like we didn't think germ theory was a thing for, you know, the majority of people didn't think germs were a thing for up into the Civil War times. They were sawing people's legs off and had you know, that's where the term like bite the bullet came from. You know, they'd wrap a lead ball in a piece of leather and put it in your mouth, and you'd bite down on that motherfucker while they sawed your leg off with a rusty, bloody thing that they sawed 50 other legs off with that day. And the doctors sported those blood stains on their tools as though they have done work. They wouldn't wipe it off. They wanted you to know, I've done this before, son. Don't worry, I got you. You know, and like that was the thinking. Not that I should have a shiny, sterilized tool every time that I do a thing. No, they wanted you to know that they were experienced and they're all their shit was all bloody and gory because they've been doing this.
Yeah,
they got time working in the ditch. You know,
that was a problem. They had a big infection problem. A lot of those guys, they would have survived their injury if not for the infection.
If they would have just boiled water and put their tools in the boiling water, you know, holy fuck, they would have probably saved thousands of lives, you know, if they'd have just done that. Not alone, you know, let alone being literally careful about what was going on and treating all the area. And I mean, you can go on and on. But like that was the majority of the world at that point thinking something that was total horseshit. That we later, with science and information and data and testable experiments, showed that, oh fuck, we should not be doing that. We should be doing it this way. So
why is there something rather than nothing?
Short answer, I don't know. And that might be my only answer. Say that's probably my only. I don't know. You know, it's
my answer would be, if you could define nothing, it would be something. So it becomes incoherent.
Right. I don't believe in the idea of nothing, as far as literally no things. Like absolutely no things. Like I don't even know what that would look like. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like that's just a incoherent statement all in its own. Like you could probably spend 2 hours on on another stream talking about nothing, and
that may be the worst one then, huh? We might have to bump that up there. That might be one of the worst arguments.
It's got to be right up there with the look at the trees, because like, I mean,
it just doesn't make any sense. Like, the more you pick it apart, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Honestly, I usually take it on their terms and try to answer it like I did, like just I don't know. But whenever you actually said that, I mean, I've thought the thought before, but that definitely fired it right back up in my brain. Like, oh yeah, we don't even have a fucking nothing. We've never had a nothing to say, because we wouldn't be here. If there was nothing, we couldn't be here to see the nothing. So it's a fucking conundrum. You can't do it.
Let's see what's next. Jesus resurrected, or other miracles prove God?
I would use Hitchens' razor and say, no, he didn't. You can assert it without evidence. I can deny it without evidence.
Irreducible complexity.
I don't believe that exists. It seems thus far as we know, the more powerful microscopes that we get, the more shit we find, as far as like particles and then when you collide them in a fucking large hadron collider, and we find little quarks and gluons and all these other fucking things that I don't know shit about. Like,
And
I
we're
don't
not
know.
and we're not pretending here, folks. You know, we're not trying. I told Trees before we started and had this chat and everything that this is not a highbrow intellectual discussion. If you want that, there are people that do that, and go listen to them by all means. This is just us talking about what we get, because eventually it has to be what the masses understand things as, because we're not all going to be these experts that have the big fancy arguments, that have the big fancy definitions, and have it all memorized, and they debate it and argue it and write about it decade after decade after decade. All we are doing is what we get from what they have all said about it, and that's what Trees and I are saying is just what we take from it, and that's eventually that's what it has to trickle down to, is what most people are understanding it as.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly my intellectual capacities as far as what I can grasp. I don't know my full boundaries and my limits to that, but I know they're there. There's going to be things that you're going to explain to me and my eyes are just going to glaze over, and I'm going to try to get it. I'm going to try my best, and I might just not get it. But I mean, like I said, a lot of times I will just defer to science because, as far as I know, these are the experts in the field. They say this is the case. I'm going with the experts in the field 100 times out of 100 because I'm not an expert in the field. So like,
and amongst experts in the fields, that doesn't make them experts in other fields, which really isn't an argument for God. It's kind of a fallacy or a straw man or something, but that doesn't apply either. Just because somebody is a great, well-established and accomplished scientist doesn't mean they know jack about another field. Just always keep that in mind, because that's a tactic that's often used. Get a biologist up, ask them geology questions. Get a geologist up, ask them biology questions.
Well, you see it in
Watch for that.
You see it in conspiracy like TV shows and like Ancient Aliens and bullshit like that. They'll get somebody, oh, this is evolutionary biologist so and so so and so, and they can tell you that this aircraft could have not been created anywhere other than Jupiter. And it's just like, what how is that guy an expert in what the fuck can be created on Jupiter? Like, and you run into that place whenever you get into that type of shit.
You can't know anything if you don't believe in God.
I don't even know what the fuck that means right off the top of my head.
It's another goofy one. It's
right. It's another, because if you dig into it enough, because I don't think a God is a thing. So if I can't know anything, it would just, I don't know. I know that I know things. So I don't believe in a God, and I know that I know things. So I don't know where that leaves us.
You just want to deny God so you can sin.
I mean, first off, I don't believe sin's a thing. So they'd have to
Well, let's call it misbehaving. You just want to be able to not follow any rules. You can just rob and steal and pillage and do whatever you like. And how much of that do you do?
exactly as much as I want to, which is none. I mean, it kind of goes back to your moral, uh, our little, we were talking about morals there earlier. It's kind of, I mean, if you go doing that shit a whole bunch, society is going to get you. It doesn't matter. They're going to, at the very least, expel you out and not allow you around. They're going to know who you are. If you steal from all the stores, pretty soon you're not going to be allowed in the stores. If you assault people in various manners, pretty soon there's going to be a poster of you on the telephone poles everywhere, and everybody's going to be looking for you and wanting to lock you up somewhere because you're a danger to people. It has nothing to do with a religion or how many of these people are religious that are doing harm to other people? Plenty. There's plenty of people that aren't. I'm not saying religious people do harm to people on mass, but well, fuck, I don't know. I don't even know because there's more religious people than not. So maybe there is,
Mhm.
but in a vague sense, not one particular religion. But I would think that just the well-being for your fellow humans around you and you not wanting to be treated as an outcast or as a harmful person, unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath that just doesn't feel empathy or remorse or anything of the sort. There's some kind of misfire in the wiring of your brain, which that happens. So, there's a big spectrum of shit of variables that go into misbehaving or sin or, all that shit, just doing things that people find to be detestable. Like, I don't know.
Well, you just need an open mind, but we have already talked that you were a believer at one time. So, as far as I'm concerned, I was never really religious or a believer, and I think I've got a pretty open mind. I'm trying to demonstrate that here. I talk to people. I like to hear what people have to say. Just because I've dismissed the arguments, I don't think that makes me having a closed mind.
No, and I think a lot of religious people tie a lot of their personality to that religion. So when they're taking offense to you attacking their beliefs, they're feeling that in their feelings like you're attacking them. So they take it personally. And I think that's where uh a lot of the strife and the arguments and it I think they have trouble separating the religion from themselves sometimes.
And like we've all like to repeat, attack the argument, not the person.
Yeah. And like it just, I mean, especially like in the internet land when we're just trying to talk to each other and figure out what you think about this certain subject or whatever. Yeah, try to be reasonable and polite. I mean, we all see the internet trolls out there that are just edge lording.
And if you want a dumpster fire, go to a dumpster fire and knock yourself out. There's plenty of them out there. Go, but then there's also, maybe we've been to the dumpster fires now. Let's have a little talk now, maybe. So,
And that's where I was going to mention it earlier. I think some about debating came up, but I think conversations are more productive than debates, like formal debates. And I know probably some of our community likes watching, like, I can't even remember the last one I watched. I think might have been Ken Ham and Bill Nye, which, it was like more of a shit show. That's just drinking a beer and eating popcorn and laughing, like it's not even serious to me anymore. And then we were in these days we're kind of running in to the idea of entertaining really harmful ideas for the sake of debating someone on them. Like debate a fucking Nazi about some fucking Nazi shit. Like that's where Nazis are kind of where I draw the line of where I have attacked Nazis before and probably would do it again. If I saw full-blown Nazis with armbands marching down my street, they're probably going to get run off. They could probably run faster than me. I said I got a bad leg, so they got a chance.
I'll give them a head start, right?
I'm giving them a fair head start.
A sporting chance.
But you get
Just
within
kidding.
arm's reach of me.
Just kidding.
You get within arm's reach of me, and I can get a hold of you, and you're a fucking Nazi. I'm probably gonna punch you. I don't. Our grandfathers, our great grandfathers, died because of going to war with Nazis. Like, and we're gonna have fuckers marching around here with their armbands.
Did you see the video I posted on Jay's Discord with the 100-year-old woman at the city council meeting?
I didn't watch it. I did see the thumbnail for it. I didn't watch it. I'll have to watch it.
Her husband died at the age of 26, I think she said, fighting the book banners and the book burners in World War II. And she, powerful. Yeah, it's like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? We sent our young men to die for this, and now we're going to turn around and do the same thing. How dare you, you know?
And it may not be exactly the same, but we've got Ukraine and Russia happening right now. And you've got Putin's army. I'm not going to call the Russian people, in mass on this. But Putin and his minions are, attacking and doing war crimes to Ukrainian people and doing some of the tactics that the Nazis were doing. And can basically be pretty much our modern day Nazis right now, as far as an actual military fighting force that is capable of doing horrible damage, and they are.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, Ukraine is taking it to their ass pretty well, but in defending themselves. But like, we're watching it right now. Like, pay attention.
It's still a huge cost. Yeah,
pay attention to
for
this.
nothing.
And more country. If Putin isn't stopped, who's next? Who's after Ukraine? Finland, Poland. Who? And I've got friends in Scotland, and it's all right there. Like they're on their way to do. It's like the Nazis never stopped, until they were stopped.
Right.
And it seems like they're pushing west until they get stopped. But that's kind of off on a tangent there.
Well, it kind of leads into the next one: cause and effect.
As with what?
There has to be a cause for every effect.
As in, like,
ultimately, there would have to be a God to be the ultimate cause.
Well, what caused the cause? Like what? Why does it goes to special pleading again? Because it's there has to be a cause up until there's special thing that doesn't need a cause, because no other reason than it's the special thing.
It's a scientific law, which it's not. It's not a scientific law.
Yeah,
but they will say it's a law. You take science, right? Cause and effect is the law in science. No, it's kind of a rule, but it's not a set in stone law.
There's whose was it? Was it Einstein or Newton that every action has an equal and opposite reaction? Right. Like, they're kind of bastardizing that.
But yeah, there's always a but. Yeah, and they leave out the but, that these are in closed systems or whatever the circumstances are. They leave that part out.
Thermodynamics is in a closed system, and they absolutely don't worry about that or the other rules of thermodynamics. They go straight to that. What is it? The second law? Or yep. If you ask what about the third law or the first law, they don't fucking know shit about it. So it's like, you're just using that because you think you're cherry picking that to try to string into your little bird's nest of bullshit.
And we got intelligent design, which is similar to a watchmaker, but it's also, that we are made special than all the other animals on the planet.
Well, I mean, if you expand intelligent design out to the other animals, there are more examples. Like I forget what the one is with the giraffe. There's a nerve,
The
like
the laryngeal nerve.
I think so. That back
It
in the
goes
day, before the
all the way up and all the
brain
way.
long neck, they had the nerve, and then it looped around something and under their stomach and back up and all this crazy shit. And it's like, oh well, back in the day, they weren't that type of animal. They were these other.
When you were a fish, it was all
Right.
right there. When you're in other animals, yeah. Why did the
And,
nerve have to go 14 feet long? Because it's
which
emergent.
have you read Your Inner Fish, the book?
No, no.
Oh, by Neil Shubin. If you get a chance, read Your Inner Fish or listen to it on audio or whatever.
I'll put it on my list. I've got a couple more books here. I told my wife I wouldn't buy any more until I finish reading the couple I haven't read yet. So
It's really good. It's all about evolution, and they made a prediction with evolution. They predicted that Tiktaalik, an intermediary species, I believe, an in between of a creature that would have had a wrist bone that would have like evolved out of what's I think an ear bone now or some shit. And they predicted the layer that it would be in and the place it should be in. And they went to that place and found it without ever knowing it existed. They went there and they found this in between species. So when they say there's no transitional forms, that is one right there that you can say with confidence. Tiktaalik is one of those ones. But we're all transitional forms. You know, like it's it's all transitioning.
it's
Evolution has not stopped.
you have to ask the line, where exactly are we not an animal or a primate or a vertebrate or whatever? And then, yeah, you're not going to get an answer.
Have you seen the arguments of them lining up the skulls from like monkey to ape with, you know, and that they're pretty much even on, well, we think these ones are all human over here and these ones are monkeys over here. Well, no, these two on the end, those are humans. And then, you know, it's like none of them can agree whenever you get the Christian scientists to get in there to, you know, you get the Ken Hams or the Ken Hovens in there to battle.
They can't agree. And that's, yeah, from, you know, they'll claim they have all kind of science and models and theories and this. No, they don't. You guys can't even agree with each other's stuff because you're making it all up and you can't keep track of your stories when you're making it up.
They've started at the goal and are just trying to compile evidence and say it with such confidence and repeat it so many times, they think that will make it true at some point. But it, like you were saying earlier, it doesn't matter how many people believe the thing, that doesn't make it true.
Everybody can be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Pascal's wager. If you don't know, it's better to believe just in case.
Basically, hedging your bets. And my initial response is, how do you should believe in which God? How do you know there isn't some wild Celtic Norse pagan hybrid god that you've never heard of about some fucking tree stump fairy somewhere, and that's the real one? You know, and none of us fucking know about it, but you know, and maybe we never will. Maybe it's a very merciful tree stump fairy that doesn't hold us accountable for not knowing about it and realizes that it's flawed too, and it just my creatures don't know, you know, like
that's a good point. I usually say, well, it's all just drawing a name out of a hat. But yeah, you just pointed out, well, what if the name's not even in the hat?
And it goes,
that's a good point.
When even when they talk about when they try to scare you with hell, I always say, well, who's hell? Because how do you know there's not a Norse pagan fairy religion that's the hell you go to, and it's way worse than all the shit you think that's bad. You know, it's like I'm dumbing it down right now to say it quickly, but you know what I mean. You can kind of use that both ways.
Well, that's I think Sam Harris is the one that said against Bill Craig that Islam's hell is worse. So if you're only trying to save your own rear end, why aren't you a Muslim?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure Muslims would agree.
Okay, and one of the favorites from everybody probably knows, Frank Turek. Takes more faith to be an atheist.
For one, I don't. I think they define it gives the definitions again because they define faith as something good. They think that's a good thing. But and my definition of faith, I guess I shouldn't say they define it differently. They find value in it. When I say faith is using your lack of evidence as evidence, and I can't remember. I'm stealing that from someone. I think maybe Dan Barker, maybe Dawkins. I don't know who the fuck.
When I had Jim Hall on, he wrote a couple books, right? And when he got done writing his book, he ran it through the plagiarism checker or whatever, and he said his book came back 30% plagiarism. And so, yeah, we repeat people, and
I know I'm repeating that. I know.
Yeah, it's hard not to, because people have said so many things. You're gonna repeat people. So,
and sometimes it's poignant, Sometimes it's a
good words.
I can't say it better than that,
Right.
And the lack of evidence being used as evidence is what faith is. You're saying you don't know. You're just going to take it on faith. So right from the get, I don't agree that that's a good pathway to finding out anything true. So you can go into Muslims have faith. Muslims have as much faith, if not more, than you. So how can you deny their faith? And they can and do argue the same shit the Christians do. I just fucking the only difference was the dude started jumping and called me an Islamophobe and said that I hated him because he was Islamic. I'm like, no, I just don't. I think your arguments suck. And I was trying to tell him I was attacking the argument, not him. And he was saying, no, there's no difference between the argument and him.
Yeah, that's a tough one. When they then why are you even trying to talk about it if you're just going to take offense as everything to your God? Then just don't say
somebody
anything.
else jumped in the conversation and said that. They were like, it looks like you just wanted to be offended and you talked to him until he said something you could grab onto and say you were offended about.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept explaining, like, this is your belief. I don't agree with it. This is you. We could talk about cars and, and maybe we could have something in common, or music or guitars, or, you name it. Maybe we got something to talk about there, and your ideas and my ideas can intermingle and it'll be cool. But these ideas I find offensive and I find silly. So I'm going to tell you that. And he just was not having it whatsoever.
Let's see. Prophecy proves God.
I mean, that's kind of a deep one too, because a lot of biblical prophecy, I thought, I could be wrong, but I thought it was shown to be written like after the fact. Some of it like is predicting, like the New Testament's predicting shit from the Old Testament that, they're trying to say
self-fulfilling.
Yeah, it's like ordering a medium rare steak, like Matt Dillahunty used to say, getting a medium rare steak and then saying you prophesized it. You contorted your writings to fit those older writings and then to try to fulfill their prophecies and to write them so vaguely that, like, I forget the exact wording, but some of them are just like, there will be wars and turmoil. Good job. We're humans. That seems to be what we do so far. So yeah, there's going to be wars and turmoil. It'd be like
I have a video on my channel where I have an open invite to anybody by religious texts or by tea leaves or by any means. If you can give me a prediction that happens after you give it to me, let me know. I have a video on it, and I'd love to document it and see if it actually happens.
And it's got to be specific. You can't just say the
Yes.
sun's
It has to
going
be
to
a what, a when, and a where.
Yeah, times, dates.
And after the time you tell me, it has to be whatever that day is, it's going to happen after that. And preferably something like in the next 20 years or so that I can live to see it.
Right. Yeah,
All right, trees, explain love.
I would say it's an emotion that humans have that I think other animals have too. I think my dog loves me. I love my dog. So like I think it's a combination of things. I think it's uh chemical reactions in your brain mixed with some choices you make. Like I chose to get my dog. I chose to rescue the dog. So like that's a choice I made that resulted in me getting love from this animal. But love at the bottom line is a chemical response in your brain that releases like what is it, dopamine or serotonin, something like that, that gives you a good feeling. And a lot of times maybe that ain't what people want to hear, but but like there's attraction when it comes to other humans. Like I don't want to just talk about animals or whatever, but like when you're with another person, you build that love though. A lot of times it may not be there as strong as it is later. You may develop bonds through tragedy, through uh going on adventures, doing things together, there's many ways you can bond together and get close and then have that love response to it, I think.
And that kind of goes along with the other one of explain art.
I think art's like to be cliche as fuck in the eye of the beholder, right? Like
it's not consistent. Love can be more of a consistency in its definition, but art is completely interpretive.
Well, art can be a painting, it could be a piece of music, it could be
the
a
trees.
Sunset.
It could be the trees.
It could be a fucking sunset. It could be how I see. Like I'm weird. Like I like if I find bones in the woods, like really old ones that have all there's no meat and nasty shit left on them. Like sometimes if I find like a little skull, like I like to put it in a fake flower and make like a thing out of it, or like I like to make shit artsy things that I find in the woods out of things that would sometimes be considered gruesome or nasty,
or a really big hornet's nest.
Yes, or a really big hornet's nest that I'm still working on. I know Pragmatic Crystal asked me about it. I want to pour a resin, like a clear resin in the back of it where it's open, so I can have like a window there that fits perfect where it's torn off. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do that. I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, one thing I learned about when they were doing the resin with the models is that you have to be careful about the mix, because if it generates too much heat, they melted the model and everything once they poured the resin over it.
Yeah, so it does.
There's the heat factor you have to be take into consideration.
My plan is to build something big enough to sit the nest. I want to get like a big silicone tray that's flexible that I can just sit that nest. I can pour the resin in there and then sit the nest into the back of it. And then whenever it all sets up, pop it out of that silicone mold and then cut it off somehow to fit, and then sand it and hopefully make it clear.
Oh, and I think that is the sun with my screen, because see how it's changed a little bit?
Yeah, I can.
And the sun's changed coming through the blind. So I think that's what it is. So I think next time I'll have that little spot fixed. So
is it a sun? God.
I think it's the sun. Yep. because it's almost got like a couple lines like where it's coming through the blind.
Yeah.
So, yep, I think that's it. So, all right, we'll fix that next time. I'm learning, and learning's good. It's all good. Let's see. Another good. The classics are either to get into heaven or to avoid hell.
I think that's kind of
Carrot in the stick.
I mean, that's kind of what they're both doing simultaneously. They're trying to avoid the bad place and get to the good place. Like it's that's where I actually talked to one of my childhood friends, became a pastor, and I talked to him, told him he knew I'm an atheist and shit, and I said, well, who's the better person if I do all the good shit and I don't believe there's a reward or a punishment? I'm just doing good things to do good things. How is it better if a Christian's doing it to avoid hell and to try to get into this good place where they think they're going to magically get to see their dead relatives, and they're going to, unless you really read like into their Bible what it says, because it says they're just going to worship God all the time, and that sounds horrific to me. You know what I mean? Like that sounds like the worst shit ever. Like you've been doing it all this time up until now to get there, and then that's what you're going to do when you're there. Like, sounds like shit. Sounds like shit deal.
I just saw Matt Dillahunty where he said he would love to be able to spend eternity playing cards with his grandma, and it warmed my heart. I was like, yeah, those were good times, just playing cards with grandma. You know what I mean? What a great, that was a nice thought, a nice memory and everything. And it's like, yeah, but that's not what the book says you're going to be doing.
But you know what? I even think at a certain point you would get sick of fucking playing cards with grandma.
Yeah, but at least that would be something to get sick of, though, wouldn't it?
It would be a damn fine thing to get sick of, because I got a grandma that's pretty bad too. But it's way better than anything their book comes up with.
Yep.
It's eternal bootlicking, basically, of this authoritarian dictator god. And I think that's where you see a lot of it in our politics, how the far right are just, they love that authoritarian shit. They love licking the boots.
And, well, I think I'm down to the end of the list. You busted through them pretty good there. Of course, there are the classics I wanted to mention. And like Trees and I talked about this beforehand, that a lot of these arguments are similar. A lot of them are the watchmaker or the god of the gaps, but we wanted to kind of, just roll through them. And I wanted to get Trees' opinion on what he thinks of them, because I know what I think about them. So I want to hear what somebody else has to say about them. So the big ones I want to just mention before we wrap things up is the ontological argument. That is, there has to be a necessary being, or there would be nothing. But I think we've already covered that nothing doesn't make any sense, because if you could define nothing, it would be something. So the necessary being of something doesn't seem to be needed, because nothing would be incoherent. Right? Is that how you look at it?
I do. And then even the necessary being thing is just, it seems like this primitive urge to have somebody to look up to give your problems to. You know what I mean? It's just this, I don't know where to blame it all on, but it gets weird and very childish at a certain level of, like, you're looking up as like you did when you're a baby. You reached up for mommy, you reached up for daddy to pick you up. If you hurt yourself, you ran to them. It's that instinct that you have to do to a parent figure, but you're doing it when you're an adult to something that's not there, and you're kind of self-soothing yourself at that point, but you're really contributing it to this magic character. instead of just saying I'm self-soothing or like owning it.
Then we go the teleological argument, which is what we covered in numerous instances, is the design argument. You find a watch, it looks designed, but there's a difference between we can trace back the designer, where when you make a supernatural claim, there's no way to trace back the designer.
I mean, when you make a supernatural claim, supernatural has never been proven. You know what I mean? So it's just like I don't even know where to go once it veers off into the supernature realm. Like I don't even know where to go with it, because it's like, and like it gets me also like when atheists believe in stuff like ghosts and shit. Like it's like, and I know atheists that do, and it's like I don't understand, how you believe that unprovable thing of a person dying and there being something in them that, there's a magic ghost that runs the meat robot or whatever the fuck. Like I just don't get it. But you separate that from when the Christians do it and you call it crazy when they do it and think that Jesus resurrected or whatever.
Right.
But you're going to say that there's disembodied things roaming around that could very well do it. That would be kind of a reresurrection, right? Like
that equally applies to one religion making fun of another religion for what they believe in, and those are some pretty big britches you got to say something like that. I mean, that's for every bit of insult that you feel when somebody says it to you, to turn around and say it to another religion.
I mean, that just shows the lack of being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, which I know I lack that.
I bit my tongue. I was searching for the word and I thought I had it, and then I decided, no, I'm not going to use that word, but I thought it. And then, the other big one is always the moral argument, which we covered, that if you don't have a God, you can't have any morals. But we even see in other species that, they mourn their dead. I just saw the mother elephant that was freaking out because her baby elephant was stuck in a well and they were rescuing the baby elephant. And she was taking on the, what do you call the scooper, that scoops the dirt.
The excavator.
Yeah, she was headbutting the bucket on the thing. I mean, she was taking that thing on, and you can't just say that there's totally no
instinct.
Yeah, that's not just instinct. That there's something else there.
I saw a traffic camera of a dog that saw its buddy dog get hit in the middle of the road and it was still alive. It ran through like 3 lanes of traffic, grabbed its buddy by the collar and drug it across like in a war zone, like ran over there and grabbed its buddy and ran back through 3 lanes of traffic and got it over to the side. And somebody ended up rescuing them both and got them off the road.
But there's no reason. Yeah, there's no reason for that whatsoever, just on an instinct or on a survival thing or instinct. I know.
Yeah, that dog loved that other dog. There's no.
That's why we don't eat them.
Yeah, that's goddamn right.
That's why we don't eat them. All right, well, we rolled through the list, and I really appreciate your time, Trees. We've been going about 2.5. So I think that's about a good time to call it. I thought we'd roll through the chat again, make sure we said hello to everybody that joined us.
Yeah, it's been great, man. I had a fun time talking to you.
Great talk, and I loved your insight, and I think you did really well. I think you've got good answers.
Thank you. I tried to be as off the cuff as I could be. Like I tried to not have too many notes or anything, like just wanted to give my genuine reaction opinion, to your questions.
You did all right for a long-haired, freaky people.
I appreciate it.
So let me So let's see. Pragmatic crystal. We'll go back from the end here. So pragmatic crystals, like thanks to the trees, thanks to Dave. Appreciate you being here, pragmatic.
Yep.
Dank Slug showed up. Appreciate you.
Showing up, Dank.
AR. Dank say beautiful people. Caterpillar is in the chat. Saying hello to everybody. We got UC Love. Good to see you.
Nice, UC. Good to see you.
Says he hates the pre-sup. It every time that it's just one of those arguments, you as soon as you hear it, you're like, oh no.
It's just the sometimes like the look of confidence on their face too when they tell you that shit. Like they found the cheat code to life with this goofy argument. And that was another thing I didn't really hit on was like just the word games. Like they act like if they say the right words in the right order, that's all it's going to take for magic to happen. Like with prayer, with getting others to believe their ideas, like it's all just, I think a lot of the times it lacks a genuine conversation aspect, and it's all this game to try, how do I say the right words to get this guy into my flock or this whoever. But yeah,
we know Kata loves nature. Forest art for the win. We love our nature. Absolutely. If you didn't hear us earlier, we were talking, we love our nature, and I love my little nature spot in my backyard, and it's open for the season. I opened it up the other day. It still has the bird netting on it because we get the herons flying over, and my wife spotted a few. So for the next few weeks, there'll be netting on it because they will clean out your pond, but quick. But yes. After that, it'll be all fully open and ready for the season. So, and yeah, AR. Lots of comments from AR. Appreciate you. Look at the bees. Oh, we forgot to mention look at the bees. And please care for the bees. We need the bees too.
I saw a honeybee today. I'm glad to see honeybees anytime I see them.
Let's see. You see love. Love what both of y'all do. We got a fan. It's just a power system with a built-in fear component. That's a good summation. If you ain't sinning, you ain't winning. Jesus died for nothing, right?
That's right. Jesus died for nothing if you don't sin. The prophecy
hates the precept. Yeah, that can't. The precept is all, and arguing with the precepts is like banging your head against the wall. You go up against somebody like Darth Dawkins and stuff, and it's like either be prepared with a really, really good argument or don't get involved. Just don't.
And it's a lot of just telling you what you believe and not taking your word that no, that's not, that's not what I believe. And they just, yes, it is. Because I seen Uncle Bobby fucking arguing with that one dude. I can't remember the other guy's name, but Uncle Bobby straight up was like, are you telling me that I don't know how I feel about, he's just like, yeah, he's like straight up, I'm going to tell you your opinion on a subject. And I'm just like, geez, how the fuck do you even talk to somebody like that?
And when they get stuck, Matt Slick uses this. When he gets stuck on something, he'll say, we'll have to have dinner sometime and I'll explain that to you. So when they get stuck, watch it.
That's dirty.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer that right now, but if we have dinner sometime, I'll answer that question.
I'll package it like I'm being a really nice, friendly guy extending the olive branch. Well, you and I can have dinner and we can discuss this like gentlemen and fluff your ego a little bit while he's sliding it in there. Like that's.
I've seen some others use it too, so that's one of the ones to watch for.
Yeah.
Let's see, AR. I feel like looking at the trees actually makes the Christian God less a real thing.
I do too, but they seem to want to throw it at us all the time that, well, if you just look at nature, but I mean, it could be the same thing like when they tell you to just read the Bible, like they probably have never looked at nature themselves. They're just telling you something they think sounds good.
Well, you know what the problem was during the Civil War? AR's got it figured out. Washing medical tools must have been too woke back then. They were just too woke.
They
Jeez,
were
what's wrong with those people?
trying to be politically correct.
Airplane mode, Law of Bundy.
Oh yeah.
We ripped and sipped before the show.
Yep.
We shared our moment. Sorry, it was a private moment that we only shared amongst himself and I. But if you want to share in it, then you'll have to do a stream with me. Let's see. Pragmatic scientific theories are testable. Absolutely. Here's a man after my own heart. Careful, the foot is always watching. All hail Bigfoot. He's always watching. I still haven't got used to doing this yet.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
It's right there. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, there's my finger. There it is. I do have a Bigfoot. I also have a mermaid, a Loch Ness monster, a gargoyle, a Buddha, and a turtle spitter because my turtle's buried out there by the pond. We had a turtle for like 20 years. So I've got a turtle spitter that's the monument for the turtle. So
nice.
They carry it around everywhere, but never fully read it. I'm guessing that's the Bible or the Quran or whatever the text might have to be. Christians probably up in arms about wolves because that whole wolves and sheep clothing bit, that's a pun in there somewhere, I think. Yeah, AR apologized for being late, but hey, you was here, so appreciate you. Pragmatic said, glad you're okay. I think he's talking about when you got injured there. So
thank you.
We're all glad you're still here with us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had this great talk today. So
right.
Pragmatic, about 30,000 changes have been made to the original Bible texts. So yeah, and what changes were they is always the question. And I think we're back up to where we were before. Slew Suffer is fine-tuning the new term for intelligent design. They run in pretty much the same circles.
Yeah. The fine-tuning, they've been pitching that fine-tuning shit for a while because of they used to say the human eye. For some reason, as they sit there with glasses on their dumb face, they'll sit there and tell you the human eye is this magical perfection from God. And then what is it? Bacterial flagellum.
Yeah.
It looks like a little motor, and they were like, you can't take a piece out of it and it'll function properly. It's like, I don't know. It's all craziness, but
we got Answers in Atheism in the chat. Hello, Mike. You might know him as Speed. Go check out Answers in Atheism too. Good stuff.
I talked to him the other day. I think he had James Apperson on there.
We all love James Apperson too. Check out James Apperson. And check out Look at the Trees. Again, his link will be in the description down below there. Good to see you, Mike. Appreciate you. And I think that's rolled through everybody. appreciate if I missed anybody, I'm sorry, but I think I covered everybody. I appreciate everybody here. Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of
Anytime.
you know, saying hi to me and hi to trees and thanking us and you know, nice chat, those type of comments. So thank you very much. And I think we'll wrap it up, trees.
All
So
right.
why don't you tell folks real quick what's going on in with your channel, what's to come, any news like that? Plug
Yeah.
away.
There'll be more Pastor Blaster episodes, of course, and I should be getting a backdrop that looks like trees pretty soon. And as the springtime comes, I will be doing more mushroom identification videos because, like, honestly, that's what my channel kind of started out as doing, as a part of what I wanted to do, because it's one of my pastimes. I like hunting wild mushrooms. So there'll be videos for that and Pastor Blasters and outdoor videos of all sorts. So, and I wanted to do a rips and sips outside where I go out, I pack out my coffee and a French press and a cup, and I go start a primitive fire, and I do it all from scratch, make a cup of coffee on a fire, and then use that as rips and sips.
Looking forward to that. I always enjoy my morning rips and sips because I usually catch trees first thing because he puts his either late in the evening or first thing in the morning. So a lot of times I start my day with the trees. So
I appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't do one today because I was going to do this, so I'll probably have one up tomorrow.
well, you keep busy. You've got quite a few videos up, so there's no shortage of things to see over there. So yeah, go check him out. And let's see. I think I covered everything, everybody, and that. And so I want to thank my special guest expert on looking at the trees, Trees himself, for joining the captive desk today. It was a great chat. I loved your answers. I think you did really great.
Thank you very much. And yeah, it was a pleasure, man.
And hang out there for a second after I click it off, and I'll talk to you backstage.
All right.
And for everybody else, if you enjoyed this video, drop it a like, hit the comment and the subscribe so you can catch future videos like these. And I'll see you then.
Peace out, gang.